In a Jewish Orthodox synagogue in Hendon, the frail Rav Krushka, Anton Lesser, collapses whilst giving a sermon. As funeral rites commence in London, the rabbi's exiled daughter Ronit Krushka, Rachel Weisz, is living her life as a photographer in Manhattan. During a photoshoot, she is told by the Brooklyn synagogue of her father's death. Wounded by the news and in a vulnerable state, she gets drunk in a local bar and sleeps with an undetermined man. Ronit flies home to London, where she feels out of place in the Orthodox Jewish community she left behind. She is greeted at the home of David Cooperman, Alessandro Nivola, a son figure to the Rav, who is taken aback by the unexpected return of his childhood friend. Her welcome inside the home is hostile from those in the community gathering in the Rav's honor. Her Aunt Fruma Hartog, Bernice Stegers, greets her more openly, though the air is frosty between Ronit and her uncle Moshe Hartog, Alan Cordner. Ronit is both upset and angry that she was not informed of her father's illness and that her father's obituary claims he was childless. Despite tension surrounding Ronit's sudden departure in the past, David invites her to stay with him and his wife. Ronit is shocked to discover that he is married to their former best friend Esti, Rachel McAdams, now a teacher at an Orthodox girls' school. It is uncomfortable between the two women. A complicated past is clearly hanging over them. The next day, Ronit visits her father's grave. After further prayers at their home, David, Esti and Ronit go to a dinner at the Hartog house with Rabbi Goldfarb, Nicholas Wootson, and Rebbetzin Goldfarb, Liza Sadavi. Ronit tries to talk to her uncle about selling her father's house, but he tells her now is not the right time for such a topic. Conversation turns to Ronit's successful career as a photographer, and Rebbetzin questions why she goes by Ronnie Curtis after seeing one of her photos in a magazine. Esti, quietly joining in the conversation, states that women change their names all the time when they get married and lose their own history. Everyone is silently shocked at Esti's controversial comment. Rebbetzin continues questioning Ronit's life in New York and asks why she is still not married, as it's the way it should be for a woman. Ronit disagrees, calling marriage an institutional obligation, and if she had stayed in the community and been married off, she would have killed herself. Everyone is shocked by her outburst, and Ronit, blaming her jet lag, excuses herself to go home. David, upon Esti's request, leaves to walk her home. Ronit breaks down to David, hoping her father knew she truly loved him. David, struggling against the rules of his religion, tries to comfort his childhood friend without touching her. Ronit visits her uncle Hartog at his wigmaker's shop to continue the discussion of selling her father's house, but is informed by Hartog that the Rav left the house and all its contents to the synagogue. She leaves and soon runs into Esti outside a supermarket. They visit the Rav's house together, a rundown mess full of medical equipment. It is not so much the house that Ronit wanted, but for her father to acknowledge her in his will. Esti admits that she does not want Ronit to leave again. Past feelings are reignited and they kiss, at first timidly as Ronit pulls back, and then passionately. Ronit retreats once more, confused about her feelings. They leave the house and Esti confesses that she had called the Brooklyn synagogue to let Ronit know of her father's death. She tells Ronit that she married David, a man she doesn't love romantically but respects, as she was mentally unwell following Ronit's sudden departure, and married their best friend upon the Rav's suggestion. As they relax into each other's company and kiss again, they are interrupted by Hinda, Clara Francis, and husband Lev, Mark Staubert, and are unsure how much they saw. Esti rushes home, tense. She almost embraces David, but their marriage still lacks the passion she has with Ronit. At school, Esti is summoned to see the headmistress Mrs. Shapiro, Caroline Gruber, where Hinda and Lev are waiting to confront her. Allegations about Esti and Ronit also plague David when he is asked by the synagogue to take on the Rav's work. Ronit waits for Esti at the school gates, where Esti tells her about the formal complaint Hinda and Lev have submitted against her. Upon Ronit's suggestion, they escape the close-knit community and head into central London for the day. Ronit and Esti continue to be conflicted in their attraction to one another. Esti feels guilty and is trying to lead a good life in line with her faith, but cannot help but desire her former lover. They go to a hotel where they make love, completely at ease and euphoric in each other's company. They talk about how Ronit's father first learnt of their relationship all those years ago. Esti returns home late at night, where David is waiting in their bedroom. He tries to get close to her, but his yearning to be intimate with his wife is rebuked once again by a confused Esti. Nauseous the next day, Esti begins to wonder if she is pregnant. David confronts Esti about Mrs. Shapiro's accusations, and she admits what happened between them. David's anger almost turns violent as he releases his frustration at his wife's inability to embrace their life together. Ronit, having overheard the argument, tries to persuade Esti to leave her husband, but Esti struggles to come to a decision. They both try to convince each other, and themselves, they are happy in their lives. Unable to cope with the current events, David seeks refuge in a quiet synagogue library. The atmosphere is tense when he returns home for dinner with Ronit and Esti. When Ronit announces that she has booked a flight back to New York that night, David seems relieved and quietly asks his wife what she plans on doing now. Ronit and Esti share a difficult goodbye, both unable to share their true feelings. Esti accuses Ronit of taking the easy option by leaving. Ronit storms out the house and Esti slams the door behind her, both heartbroken at the recent events. In the middle of the night, Esti leaves the house whilst David is asleep and returns to the hotel room with a pregnancy test. Waking up at the airport the next morning, Ronit receives a panicked phone call from David saying Esti is missing. After trying to calm him down, she continues to check into her flight, but later decides to leave and help David in the search for her. Returning home after failing in their search for Esti, Ronit is still angry that David didn't tell her of her father's illness. Esti returns from hiding and, having heard everything, announces her pregnancy. David is joyous, believing a child will solve all their marital problems, but Esti instead asks for freedom for her and her child. She was born into the community and wants to give her child the freedom of choice she never had. David is speechless and Esti feels guilty for crushing her husband's dreams of becoming a father. Ronit and Esti attend the hesped at the synagogue, intimidated by the judgmental looks they receive. Esti tries to make peace with David, but he ignores her. Moved by the temple's sacred atmosphere, Ronit asks Esti to be with her in New York. They clutch hands as David takes to the podium, where he struggles to deliver the official speech on the Rav's passing. Seeing Ronit in the crowd, he instead contemplates the notion of freedom and choice, a topic that the Rav spoke about in his final sermon, and grants Esti the autonomy she has requested. David declines the synagogue position and abruptly leaves the hesped. Outside, overcome with emotion, Esti and David hug. Ronit watches on in the distance until David extends an arm and the three friends have a long heartfelt hug together. The next morning, Ronit prepares to leave for the airport. She bids a quiet farewell to David outside his bedroom and goes to see Esti, who has slept on the sofa. They say goodbye. It seems Esti has decided against joining Ronit in New York. As Ronit's taxi pulls away down the street, Esti runs after her and the pair share a long goodbye kiss, promising to remain in contact. An emotional Ronit visits her father's grave one last time and takes a photo, achieving a sense of closure over his passing and the recent events. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next video.